Good morning, students. So today we are going to see the second chapter of the fourth module, that is nothing but a firewalls. So all of you might have heard a name firewalls. Firewalls is nothing but a security guard which will provide access to the legitimate websites and users and does not allow any malicious packets to enter into the campus. So the definition says a firewall acts as a security guard controlling access between an internal protected network and an external untrusted network based on a given security policy. So when you want to implement a firewall into any small house or a college campus, so there are some security policies which need to be implemented in the firewall, and based on that you can fix it. Besides preventing intruder getting in, a firewall also helps prevent confidential inside data from getting out. A firewall may be implemented in hardware as a stand-alone firewall appliance or in software on a personal computer. A single firewall may be adequate for small businesses and homes. However, in several large enterprises, multiple firewalls are deployed to achieve defense in depth. So in this chapter, we are going to see the following parts. First one is the basics, in which we are going to see firewall functionality, policies and access control list, firewall types. Firewall functionality. The main functions of a firewall are listed as follows. So first one is access control. A firewall filters incoming, that is from internet into the organization, as well as outgoing from within the organization to the outside packets. So the main task of the firewall is to filter the incoming and outgoing packets either from internet into the organization or from the organization into the outside world. A firewall is said to be configured with a rule set based on which it decides which packets are allowed to be and which are to be dropped. So second functionality of firewall is address or a port translation. So the network address translation, that is NAT, was initially devised to alleviate the serious shortage of IP addresses by providing a set of private addresses that could be used by system administrator on their internal networks, but rather than globally invalid on the internet. So it is possible to conceal the addressing schema of these machines from the outside world through the use of network address translation. Through network address translation, internal machines, though not visible on the internet, can establish a connection with external machines on the internet. NATing is often done by firewalls. So the main task of that is assigning the IP addresses to the systems which is focused by the firewall is nothing but a network address translation. So this is the task done by the firewall. Third one is a logging. A sound security architecture will ensure that each incoming or outgoing packet encounters at least one firewall. The firewall can log all the anomalous packets or flows for later study. These logs are very useful for studying attempts at intrusion together with various swarms and distributed denial of service attack. So main thing is that whenever the incoming packet or outgoing packet is inserted into the firewall architecture, then we need to maintain the information of that one. So whenever there is a certain kind of attack by the intruder, then by studying these types of packets we'll come to know who is the intruder. Authentication, caching, etc. Some types of firewalls perform authentication of external machines attempting to establish a connection with an internal machine. Then a special type of firewall called web proxy authenticates internal users attempting to access an external service. Such a firewall is also used to cache frequently requested web pages. This results in decreased response time to the client while saving communication bandwidth. So there are so many other functionalities of a firewall. So among that one is a web proxy, which authenticates the internal users which attempt to access an external service. And the main task of this web proxy is to cache frequently requested web pages. So these are the main functionalities of firewalls. So next, coming to policies and access control list. High level policies for access to various types of services are formulated within an organization or campus. So we need to implement some of the policies for the various types of services which are formulated within an organization or a campus. For example, all received email should be filtered for spam and viruses. All HTTP requests by external clients for access to authorized pages of the organization's website should be permitted. DNS, that is domain name service queries made by external clients, should be allowed provided they pertain to addresses of the organization's publicly accessible services such as web server or the external email server. The organization's employees should be allowed to remotely log in into authorized internal machines. All such communication should be authenticated and encrypted. Only two types of outgoing traffic are permitted. First, all email from within the organization to the outside world are permitted. Second, requests emanating from within the organization for external web pages are permitted. So these are some of the examples where we can go for implementing the high level policies. Then high level policies are translated into a set of rules that comprise an access control list. A rule specifies the action to be taken as a function of the packet's source IP address and port number, the packet's destination IP address and a port number, the transport protocol in use, whether it's a TCP or a UDP, and the packet's direction, which is an incoming packet or outgoing packet. So whenever you need to take a action, so you need to consider all these parts, that is the packet's IP address, source as well as destination, then port number, transport protocol, and the direction of the packets. So the access control list for the high level policies is described in this table. So now if you see, there are total 8 number of rules they have implemented: inbound or outbound, transport protocol, which protocol they have used, source IP address, source port number, destination IP address, destination port, and what the action need to be taken. So here MS, WS and NS are the IP addresses of the organization's email server, web server and DNS server respectively. So now if you see the rules which we have implemented here, that is rule number 5 and 8, the default action is a deny. So for every packet which applies the rule number 5 and 8, the default action has been specified it as a deny. That is nothing but forbid all other incoming traffic, forbid all other outgoing traffic. Otherwise, if you go through the remaining, that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 and 7, the default action have been given it as a permit. Permit is nothing but allow that packet to insert into the organization's protected network. Policies in general can be permissive or restrictive. A permissive policy is defined as permit all packets except those that are explicitly forbidden. A restrictive policy, on the other hand, is defined as follows: drop all the packets except those that are explicitly permitted. So whatever the table we have seen in the previous slide, it implements a restrictive policy. The default action is a deny. If you see in the rule number 5 and 8, the rules are scanned from top to bottom As soon as a rule is found that matches the packet's attributes, that is IP address, port number, etc., the action in that rule, which is usually a permit or a deny, is taken and no other further rules are processed for that packet. Scanning order is important. So whenever the packet comes at a firewall, so that packet is scanned from top to bottom, that is nothing but from rule number 1 to rule number 8, and if there is a match found with the packet's attribute like IP addresses, port number, etc., if suppose it is going to match the rule number 2, then whatever is concerned action is there, maybe it's a permit or a deny, that takes place, and after that that packet will not undergo further rules. For example, here if rules 4 and 5 in a table 21.1 are interchanged, then IP security traffic will be dropped. Also, from a performance perspective, it makes sense to put the most frequently acted upon rules earlier. So by doing, we can expedite the decision on what to do with a packet. Finally, it is important to include the default deny rule at the end of the rule set. This prevents ambiguity over what action to take for a packet that has not been matched against the attribute in any of the previous rules. So that's why the last rule 8 is included, that if the packet's attribute are not going to match with any attributes with the previous rules, then the default action should be deny. Then firewall types. Firewalls can be classified into the 3 categories: packet filters, stateful inspection, application level firewalls. Packet filters. This involves checking for matches in the IP, TCP or UDP header. For example, it may be necessary to check whether a packet carries a certain specific source or a destination IP address or a port number. It is often performed by the border router or access router that connects the organization network to the internet. In effect, the border router becomes the first line of defense against the malicious incoming packets. Why the packet filtering firewall is inadequate. So we'll see with an example here. Consider an external mail server. Suppose the IP address of it is ABC that wishes to deliver a mail to an organization. For this purpose, it should first establish a TCP connection with the organization's mail server. Consider the arrival of packet with the following attributes, that is source IP address is ABC, destination IP address is suppose MS, TCP destination port number is suppose 25, which is a SMTP, and acknowledgement flag set. Such a packet would be part of a normal flow provided a connection between the ABC to MS has been established. But suppose such a connection has not been established. Should the packet still be allowed in? The simple packet filter will allow the packet to enter even if no prior connection between ABC and MS was established. It should be noted that such packets are often used to perform port scans. A simple packet filter merely inspects the header of an incoming packet in isolation. It does view a packet as part of a connection or a flow. Hence, it will not be able to filter out such packets arriving from ABC. So, if you do not check the header, packet header information, then it's not possible to filter the packet, and once that packet arrives within your organization, then it may harm your organization network. So that is what a main thing the packet filtering firewall does. Stateful inspection. A firewall uses packets, TCP flags and sequence or acknowledgement number to determine whether it is a part of an existing authorized flow. If it is participating in the establishment of an authorized connection, or if it is already part of an existing connection, the packet is permitted. Otherwise, it is dropped. In the above example of a packet from ABC, the stateful packet inspection firewall will realize that it has not encountered the first 2 packets in the 3-way handshake and will hence drop this packet. So there has to be a first handshake protocol rules need to be followed. For first, the ABC has to take a permission that he want to have a communication with MS. Then MS has to give a reply in form of a yes, and if it is a yes, then the packet transferring takes place. So as that has not been happened in the previous example, the stateful packet inspection firewall is going to drop this packet. So third one is the application level firewalls. The packet filtering firewall, even with the added functionality of a stateful packet inspection, is still severely limited. What is needed is a firewall that can examine the application payload and scans packet for worms, viruses, spam mail, and inappropriate content. Such a device is called as deep inspection firewall. So in the last two types of firewalls, we are just going to examine the packet header information, and based on that packet header information, we are going to allow that packet to enter into the organization network, or we are denying it. But we are not going to check the content of that packet. And suppose that packet contains a virus, a worms, or a spam mails, like that information, then when it enters into the organization network, it may harm your organization network. So that is what a thing lagging in packet filtering firewall and stateful inspection firewall. So a special kind of application level firewall is built using proxy agents. Such a proxy firewall acts as an intermediary between the client and a server. The client establishes a TCP connection to the proxy, and the proxy establishes another TCP connection with the server. Now when the client want to have a communication with the external server, remember, in between the client and the server there is a proxy server available. So when the client sends a request for getting a service from the server, first it will be sent to the proxy, then proxy checks the information in that, and if it follows all the protocol rules, whatever it has been implemented, then only it will be transmitted to the real server, and the real server provides you the service to the proxy, and then proxy to the client it will be forwarded, which is shown in the next figure. To a client, the proxy appears as a server, and to the server the proxy appears as a client. Since there is no direct connection between the client and a server, worms and other malware will not be able to pass between the two, assuming that the proxy can detect and filter out the malware. Hence the presence of a proxy enhances the security. So here you can see, so first figure is without a proxy. Our client is directly communicating with the server, which uses the direct TCP connection between the client and a server. So if a client sends a request, and suppose that request contains a malware or any kind of viruses or worms, then it is going to affect on the server side. So in the second figure, it's with a proxy, so there is no direct TCP connection between the client and a server. In between the client and a server, there is a proxy firewall available, which filters out the packets which contains the malwares, and then it will be forwarded to the server. So in addition to filtering based on the application layer data, proxies can perform client authentication and logging. An HTTP proxy can also cache web pages. Caching has a major impact on a performance. If the web pages is cached in a web proxy server located in the client's organization, the response time could be greatly reduced compared to that where the page has to be fetched from the external web server. So the main job of this proxy server is that once it gets a service from the external server, it keeps a one copy of that one into the proxy server database, and once again when another client requests for the same type of a service from the real server, as the proxy server is going to have a copy of it one, it is going to provide that service directly to the client without communicating to the real server. This is what the thing the proxy server does, which we call it as a caching, which is going to reduce the response time. Also, caching reduces the demand on external communication bandwidth while easing the load on the web server. Firewalls are a necessary elements in the security architecture of an organization that permit access to or from the external world. So in the next section, we'll study firewall deployment. So where exactly we need to deploy this firewall? The security architecture of a medium size or a large organization includes firewalls, proxy servers, virtual private networks, terminators, intrusion detection prevention devices. So these are the practical issues we are going to see in this part. First one is placement of a firewalls and firewall configuration. So in the placement of firewall, where exactly we need to place this firewall, so that whatever the rules it has been implemented in the firewall, it will takes place properly, and based on that our organization network will not be harmed. We first note that firewall helps segregate or isolate the network into the multiple security zones. Each firewall in the organization enforces rules that control the transfer of packet between two different security zones. So at the very least, there are three zones they have recognized. First one is the internet, second one is the region containing the publicly accessible servers, and third one is the internal network. Now if you see the figure, there are 4 zones, and within these 4 zones there are 3 firewalls been situated. So first one we have, it's the internet. So here is the internet, then FW1, which is a firewall 1, then FW2, which is a firewall 2, then border router, it's a packet filtering firewall. Then the 4 zones we have, it's a one internet screen subnet, which is called as a DMZ1, another is called as a DMZ2, and fourth one it's a internal network. So here you can say S1 to SN are the user workstations which are connected within the internal network. So these are the 4 zones we have, and we have used the 3 firewalls. One is a border router, firewall 1 and firewall 2. So where exactly we need to fix these firewalls within these 4 zones, we'll see one by one. So out of the 3 firewalls, the first is really a router, the border router with some packet filtering capability. This is the access router interface with the internet. So it is connected to a stateful firewall, that is FW1, which has 3 interfaces. Now if you see, FW1 is going to have a 3 interfaces, one which is coming from the border router, second one which is connected with the screened subnet, and third one is a DMZ2. The zone connected to the right interface of a firewall 1 is referred to as a screen subnet, though it is more commonly referred to as demilitarized zone, and it is labeled as DMZ1. A DMZ is the area between the 2 firewalls. Demilitarized zones are so called because they often host servers that are accessible to the internet and also to the internal network. Because they are accessible to the public, they are most likely machines to be compromised in the entire network. Once a machine in the DMZ is compromised, other machines in the DMZ could be infected. So DMZ1 contains the publicly accessible server. So these includes web server, external email server, the DNS server. All incoming mail from the internet is received by this email server, which checks for virus signature and spam mail. The DNS server resolves the names of publicly accessible servers. However, care should be taken to ensure that it does not contain address records of any of the internal machines. DMZ2 contains the internal email server. This is the server that hosts the mailboxes of the company employees. It handles the sending and receiving of all mail between the internal parties. It periodically establishes a connection to the external mail server to retrieve all incoming mails. Outgoing mails, that is from internal network to the internet, can be handled in several ways. The internal mail server can set up an SMTP connection to a remote mail server to transfer the mail, or else it can connect to the external mail server and use it to relay all outgoing mail. DMZ2 also contains the internet proxy server. All internal users who wish to access external web pages connect to the proxy. The proxy authenticates internal user and decides whether a page can be accessed. The proxy scans incoming web pages for virus signature and objectionable content. Finally, the proxy also performs caching of web pages. The internal network contains application server, database server, and user workstations. It also has an internal DNS server, which is different from the external DNS server in that it provides mapping between the domain names of the internal machines and their IP addresses. The internal machines all have private addresses. It is neither necessary nor desirable for third parties on the internet to be aware of these private addresses of the internal machines. Hence, this DNS server is placed in the internal network. A feature of the security architecture which is shown in the figure is that services such as DNS and email are split. There is an internal DNS server as well as external one. Likewise, there is an internal email server and an external one. Generally, no external connection should be allowed to the internal servers. Connections in the reverse direction from the internal servers to host on the internet should either be forbidden or severely restricted. So next part is a firewall configuration. In order to create a firewall rule set, we need to identify all the possible authorized connections that might be set up between pairs of machines in two different zones adjacent to the firewall. We first present a simplified version of the rule set for firewall 2, and then we'll go for simplified rule set for firewall 2. So now here is a simplified rule set for firewall 2. So there are 4 rules they have implemented. Suppose you are receiving a packet from an unknown IP address, star indicates, from any port, from any IP address, and that packet is intended to the internal machine from any port number, and suppose it has used any protocol, then action should be dropped. Suppose a user having a port number anything to the internal mail server using a port number 25, which is a port number of a SMTP, then accept that and allow that mail to enter into the organization and forward it to the internal mail server. So suppose there is a packet coming from the user using any port number which is intended to the proxy server within the firewall 2, which uses a port number 80, which is nothing but a HTTP transfer protocol, then accept it. It is a web page. Then suppose from any user using any port number, IP address is suppose DMZ2, then drop that packet. The first rule states that no machine from any other security zone is permitted to establish a TCP connection to any internal machine. Rules 2 to 4 assert that other than connections from internal stations to the internal mail servers and web proxy, no other connections are permitted to DMZ1, DMZ2 or the internet. So the next is a simplified rule set for the firewall 1. So here we have total 1 to 9 rules. So for rule number 1 says drop, 9 says drop, 6 says drop, other all are accept. So what are these rules? Indicates will say. So the rule 1 in table 21.3 states that no TCP connection is to be established to any machine in DMZ2 from any machine in DMZ1 or the internet. The rule 2 states that external mail server can accept connections from the internal mail server to receive incoming mail or to send outgoing mail. Rule 3 allows connection to the external mail server from mail server on the internet to deposit incoming mail. Rule 4 and 5 permit connections from the internet to the organization's web server and external DNS server respectively. Rule 6 states that no other connection may be set up to any machine in DMZ1 for any other purpose. Rule 7 and 8 says that the internal proxy in DMZ2 and external mail server are permitted to make connection to machines on the internet to access web pages and to send outgoing mail. Rule 9 says that confirm that no other connection from the organization machine to the internet for any other purpose is allowed. So this is what a firewall chapter of a second chapter of a fourth module.